Coming up on A Courageous Heart.
My dad remarried when I was 15, and my stepmother kicked me out of the house. So I went from country club to streets.
A Courageous Heart with Karen Dye.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to A Courageous Heart. I'm Karen Dye. Today I'm going to introduce you to a woman by the name of Kim Spangler. I think you'll relate to Kim, especially if you're a woman who feels your past has been too horrific that God will never be able to use you for ministry. You'll also be able to relate to Kim if you have tried to fill up your life with things, relationships, addictions, and you found them all to leave you feeling worse off than before you started. Kim is going to talk with us today and share with us a little bit about her life and how the Lord reached into the depth of her sin and pulled her out and gave her ministry that is now ministering to thousands of women. Sometimes all it takes is just a little talk, woman to woman, with a courageous heart. Kim, thank you so much for allowing us to come in and be a part of your day today. Let's introduce people to you. I've had the opportunity to know you for a while, but I want our viewers to really get to know who Kim Spangler is and where she got her start. So if you would, just give us a little background on how life began for you.
Well, Karen, I grew up in a very wealthy home, a very privileged only child. My mother was quite ill during my growing up years and died when I was 13 of cancer. My father was an executive and an alcoholic, so he was often away from home. And so when Mom passed away, I started singing in nightclubs and modeling while in junior high, and which should not have happened, but did. My dad remarried when I was 15, and my stepmother kicked me out of the house. So I went from country club to streets very quickly.
Did you have any sort of an upbringing in that home before you were kicked out with the Lord? Were you church-going people?
We were church-going people, Karen, but it was religion and not relationship. And so that foundation was there in a sense, but it wasn't real. It wasn't real to me.
That's a fact, isn't it, Kim, that relationship is the key?
Yes.
When we grow up with the religion, I know I was brought up the same way. I knew all of the rules, but I didn't understand relationship.
Yes.
And I think it is Josh McDowell who said, rules without relationship breeds rebellion. And that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely.
And, so you did have some sort of an understanding that there was a God and that he did care about you. But living out on the streets, tell me what that was like for you and how long did that go on?
Well, you mentioned attractive, Karen, and I did not feel attractive, you know. So those jobs I was getting, I felt I was getting because people felt sorry for me. But on the streets, I still finished high school. I did it by drinking a fifth of scotch a day. And in doing ramp modeling, I was fine, but photo shoots, I was too fat. So then that became a spectrum of speed in the morning and downers at night and scotch and all of that, a cycle, a downhill cycle. And realized that my safety and security for some reason was going to be in men, because even though I didn't feel attractive, they were obviously attracted to me. I didn't get that, but I used it because it gave me a place to live and it gave me security. And that's what I did. I went from relationship to relationship.
Growing up, I too was in a home where I didn't get a lot of validation on how I looked. And then of course you're in a world where everything screams at you. You must be a certain size, you must have a certain kind of hair, a certain kind of look in order to have value. And that certainly isn't the way God looks at things. So I think we are hitting a nerve with our viewers right now, because there are a lot of gals who are watching right now that say, yes, that's exactly how I feel. At what point did you overcome that? At what point, and after how many relationships and struggles, did you finally say to yourself, okay, this isn't working, Kim. This is not working. The plan that you have in place isn't it. I have a better way. When did you get to that point?
Well, that point came as a result of trying to kill myself for the third time, and ended up in the hospital in what was then that hospital's answer to rehab, which was a psych unit with bars on the windows and keeping me doped up most of the time. But that's when I realized, okay, something's wrong here.
Trying to take your life 3 times is a pretty serious place to be.
Yes.
That's somewhere where I think most people would agree you're out of hope and you're out of faith and you're just running dry on all accounts. And so apparently at this point you're realizing that the alcohol, the drugs, the men are not filling up the spot and you have nothing left to live for.
That's right.
Usually it's in those moments though that God will swoop in and pick us up and really reveal himself to us if we ask. Did you ask?
I did. In fact, I called out one night. Screamed would be a better word, with 4-letter words, and said, God, if you're real, then blankety blank, show to me that you are. And he did. I had a Gideon Bible beside my bedside table. It was blue. I remember that very clearly. And I opened it, but in a manner he opened it. And my eyes fell on Matthew 28:20. And lo, I'm with you always, even until the end of the age. And he was. And I felt just the beginning of acceptance and love.
I think a lot of times the Lord does do that. He answers us right where we are, in the place where we are. He meets us. You know, I'm reminded of the adulterous woman and how she's drugged to the middle of town, and you know that she's probably scantily dressed or she's naked and she's in the middle of the town square. And what does Jesus do as they're all condemning her? Is he gets down in the dirt with her. And by the time the parable is over or the event is over, it's an actual event, he reaches down and pulls her up out of that dirt. And I think that there are a lot of us who have experienced that from him. So you now feel that you maybe have an inkling of this unconditional love you can get from your Heavenly Father. We still have a lot of issues going on. We have alcoholism, we have drug addiction, we have relationships, marriages. You endured quite a bit from the enemy's toolbox. You went through quite a few things. Were you delivered instantly, Kim? Because a lot of people feel like, okay, well, God has told me that too. I know he loves me, but I'm still fighting this addiction. I'm still fighting this battle. I'm still fighting the things that tell me I'm not good enough. What was it for you? What kind of God experience was it for you?
Well, you know, Karen, the enemy's toolbox included a bad marriage, an abusive marriage, abusive relationships pushed through a plate glass window, a rape and an abortion. But in that process, I began to very clearly see that I was unconditionally loved, began to read that I was out of his life-giving word, and delivered instantaneously from the drugs, but not from the alcohol, and knew I was forgiven for the abortion and all the other issues in my life, but not the alcohol. It's been an ongoing struggle.
You know, I think sometimes, Kim, that the Lord answers our prayers, and sometimes he does it instantaneously. Sometimes we have to hang on a little longer. And I know that in my walk, that there are things that I pray for over and over and over. Lord, take this from me, take this from me, much like Paul prayed and said, would you remove this affliction from me? And he'll say, no, my grace is sufficient. And I think he knows that we rely heavily upon him when we know we're fighting through something. And addictions are serious things. You had certainly, you know, a father who was in alcohol. You had generations of alcoholics that were going on. So that obviously is something that is very, very, has a stronghold within your life. And so how important was it for you, though, to stay in the Word so that that stronghold did not take root in your life and you're able now to kind of break that curse that went on for so many generations? How important is it for women watching today to get those bad thoughts out of their mind, and you said fill them up with what the Lord said about you?
Karen, it's very important. It truly became my daily manna, my bread. And I could sense and tell the minute it wasn't, because there would be that urge to stop off. You know, nobody will know. You can go get a bottle, nobody will know the difference, you know. That and fellowship making the big difference.
So now you've experienced God, you've experienced his love for you in all of its fullness. You're on your way to recovery. And you actually meet a man who relocates you into a different environment, and things begin to change. You actually become quite a woman to be reckoned with. Catch us up to date now from that point where you met your husband and you relocated and found yourself homeschooling, and even God promoting you on to a more powerful position, if there is such a thing as that.
Well, I met Les, and this was my third marriage, a godly marriage. He was a believer. It did change my life, Karen. He was the one who pushed me, as a result of the work we did with homeschoolers and with support groups, into lobbying at the Jeff City level and at the national level through Homeschool Legal Defense and Family Research Council. I was not wanting to do that. I was safe, I was comfortable. But isn't it interesting that all those times of working a crowd or using a mic or being in front of people ended up being a strength that God redeemed after the other weaknesses.
I love when the enemy gets smacked in the face by God. I just love when he thinks, oh, I've done all these things to Kim and I'm going to mess up her life totally. And then God says, she's mine. You can't snatch her from my hand. I'm going to take everything that you've taught her and I'm going to turn it around for good. So you're lobbying for homeschoolers in Jefferson City, Missouri, and making a difference in a way that you never ever probably thought that you would. But Kim, something even bigger than that came. Tell me about your ministry.
I knew the season was over, Karen, and I wanted to touch women at a local level, to do something non-legislatively, to invest in lives. And so I quit. Not a good time in the natural. My husband had been diagnosed with emphysema, ended up in hospice, just passed away a year ago. I'd been diagnosed with lupus, had times I couldn't walk, and my son was heading off to college. So in the natural, that was not a very good time to say, I quit, I'm not going to be the breadwinner, I'm going to start something with 10 women in my living room. But we did.
So Women to Women, the ministry, was born, and it operates here out of the beautiful Lake of the Ozarks in a beautiful facility.
Thank you.
And I want to learn a little bit about that ministry. I want our viewers to understand, again, how the Lord took what the enemy kind of used to trip you up, all of those things that would make us think in the norm, I'm unusable for the kingdom of Christ. How the Lord said, no, you're not. You're willing, you love me, and I've got a plan. Just let me show you. Tell me about Woman to Woman and what he birthed into your heart and the hearts of those women in your living room that day.
These 10 women in my living room, some of whom I really didn't even know, but I felt they needed to be there, were helping me take the risk, because it was scary stuff, Karen, very scary. They had all been through other things, similar things, on the other side of, again, what the enemy meant for evil. And so we decided to form an organization that would have mentors, Woman to Woman, as a faith-based ministry. And that's literally what we started with. It's expanded into 15 programs and 3,000 women and their families.
Wow.
We didn't know what we were doing then, and sometimes we don't know what we're doing now. There's great credibility in us being able to sit across from that client, and not just me, but our entire 55 volunteer staff, and we're all volunteers, by the way, in saying, yes, as much as I can, I know what you mean about being abused and how you feel you can't make a change, or what it feels to be raped, or the grieving of abortion, and be able to say, but this is what God did for me, so he can do that for you.
God can do more than we can ever dream, think, or imagine. That's a fact. And obviously, he is working through you and through the ministry. Even as we're here and conducting this interview, the phones are ringing and women are counseling other women. And that just gives me great hope that God is working in his people and working in this world. Give us an example of some of the programs that Women to Women offer, and is it just something that's available here locally, or is this something that is has dreams of perhaps reaching out at a state level, a national level? Tell me what God has purposed on your heart for Woman to Woman.
Well, through God's grace, I'm very clear on what our vision for Woman to Woman is these 11 years. And we still have much to accomplish, Karen. Transitional housing, daycare. We have a Women on the Move program that is our transportation for our clients to classes and to their jobs. You know, down here at the lake in this Tri-County area in which we minister, there's no infrastructure. You can't go to the corner and get a bus, you know. We have a job placement, job bank program. And while I would be very willing to help anyone somewhere else with mentoring or giving them materials, we're not kingdom builders here. I want to do what God has given us to do, and we're not done yet. I think I can retire when I'm 90 if we get everything accomplished. And I'm about doing it in Camden, Morgan, and Miller County, and doing it in excellence.
Kim, tell me about the average woman, the client that walks through a woman-to-woman store each day. Is she a particular nationality? Is she a particular economic class? Is she someone that we would see on the streets and think, oh, that's a woman-to-woman client? Or is there really no profile for the woman that walks in? Because my experience in life has told me that we all need help at one time or another. But let's hear from the experts.
Karen, you're absolutely right. There is no profile. In these 11 years, we've had an 11-year-old mother. I've had an 80-year-old widow, single moms, women who are very successful executives who are just kind of lost in that part of their life. Predominantly, lately, we've been seeing a lot of single moms, welfare situations that need to become economically self-sufficient.
The programs that you offer, you have makeover programs. You actually take the woman who comes in, evaluates her need, counsel her, mentor her, give her some real tools to use. Do you have an example of how Women to Women has been successful? Can you recall, and I'm sure you have hundreds of stories, but is there one that maybe tugs at Kim's heart a little more than others that you could share with our viewers?
One I can think of, Karen, is Clara, who came to us years ago, and I mentored her and had the privilege of seeing the change. She was living in a tent with her 10-year-old son at the height of summer at Bagnell River Campground, had escaped with her life and the life of her son from Iowa. And literally they had a cooler and a flashlight. And the cooler was the refrigerator, the cooler was the chair, the cooler was the kitchen. And through Division of Family Services, she was referred to me. And through a process, you know, it's a journey for all of us. I had her in one of my classes, which I teach on abuse and toxic relationships and codependency. She knew from the outset, she came in with this church people attitude, exactly what you described. And she sat through the classes, and as we prayed to open and end each class, she sat through that. And one day I began to close with prayer, and she said, no, I want to pray. And I'm thinking, oh God, help me extend grace. I wasn't sure exactly what was going to come out. But she prayed, and it was a powerful prayer, very simple, heartfelt prayer. And then she said to the women in the class, just like this, and this God stuff is real. The long story is that she began to get all of her children back with her. We scholarshiped her. She became a CMT, CNA. Was going to go on to LPN school, has her own home now, has a family night with her children. We brought Bibles for all of them, and just a true success story.
What a great success story, and something that just should inspire all of us to know that, you know, even with humble beginnings and very little, the Lord is able to make much. And Clara's story just has to bless your heart, knowing that you had a hand in being the vessel that God worked through. You did a lot for her. You do a lot for a lot of women. Is there accountability on their part, or is this just a free handout? I know that there are some people who are watching who are thinking, okay, but do people just come in and they take care of them and coddle them? But is there an accountability? At some point, do they, just as you did, have to get up and choose to live for the Lord each and every single day in order for the plan to work?
There is great accountability within our programs. That's biblical, first of all. They learn that behavior has consequences. They sign mentor contracts, you know, what the mentor will do, what the client will do. And we have a 3 strikes you're out program. So if they don't show up for a class or a job interview and they don't call, that's a strike. And we train them, rather than going like this, that you've shown me by your behavior that you're not ready to make this commitment. Now, over the years, we've seen, as I've struck out about 10% of our 3,000 women that are coming back, and now they're teachable, and they say, I'm ready now.
One of the things that you say spoke to you, you loved when you read your Bible, hearing stories that Jesus would tell about parables and different things. I think we all kind of like that. We all like the real life demonstrations. Do you use parables at all with the gals who come in here? Because you have to imagine that a lot of them have not been exposed to Scripture. And if you just blew a lot of Christianese at them, they would have no idea what you were talking about. So do you use parables at all when you teach your young ladies?
Stories are powerful. And you're right, these women, for the most part, haven't been exposed to parables and stories. But Jesus used them because they were so effective. And one thing we use here, and you'll notice throughout our environment, you'll see sunflowers everywhere. Take a little sunflower seed, very tiny, and we can say to a client, you know, you may feel like that small, tiny seed. But even here in Missouri at the lake, in the rocky clay soil that we have, given the right conditions, the right nurturing, the right growth, in one season, and it's important for them to hear that it's not 30 years from now, you can be a sunflower stalk of 9 feet tall, and they get that. And so we are growing sunflowers here. Just one of the stories that we use as an object talk. They're not going to remember everything we say. They're not going to remember everything in classes. But we are holding forth hope in this, Karen, and they get that.
So it sounds as though that 15-year-old girl again, who was really struggling, addicted to drugs, alcohol, singing in places she shouldn't have been, looking for love in all the wrong places, abortion, all the things that went wrong, God birthed this wonderful ministry called Women to Kim. And that's wonderful. And there are people whose lives are being changed. And I think when you arrive in heaven, God's just going to turn you around and you're going to see all those little faces and say, you had a part to play in each one of those lives in the way they fell in love with me. And that no one can take it away from you. That's a huge legacy that you leave behind that perhaps your parents weren't able to. And so God has broke that curse in your life. Now some will sit there and say, so life is all perfect for Kim today. Kim doesn't have any more struggles. The enemy is backed off. She's not under attack. Maybe if I become a Christian, that'll happen for me. I'll have everything perfect. Is that the truth, Miss Kim?
You know, unfortunately, Karen, life isn't perfect. We're not home yet. And my husband passed away a year and a month ago. Was home with me in hospice for 3 years. I had that privilege of caring for him. I am dealing with some physical limitations with lupus. There are days I don't walk very well, days I don't talk very well, days when it's a struggle to get out of bed. But he is with me, and I am doing exactly what he's wanted me to do. And because of that, he will give me that strength and continue. Now I'm living on a widow's pension. You know, this is a challenge in itself because we're all volunteers here at Woman to Woman. So there are lots of challenges in lots of areas, but God is faithful, and I'm not worried about it.
I love your attitude of, yes, there are still problems, but I know he's faithful. And I think another thing women tend to do, we like to worry a lot. And I have found even in my own life, God has been so faithful in such big ways, similar to yours, that when something goes wrong at home and it's a smaller issue and I have that fear that rises up and I think, wait a minute, he did this huge thing back here. Do you really think this is going to be an issue? And so that's a great reminder for all of us, your story, that he is capable and he is willing, but your obedience was that you cried out and said, make yourself known to me. There are thousands and thousands of women who will see this program, who are watching not by accident, but because I believe the Lord is sending them a word in due season. And they're sitting there thinking, I don't know if he can use me. I don't know if he even loves me. Everyone around me has told me I have no worth. Everyone around me has told me I am wrong in every possible area of my life. And I see how other women live, but I don't know that that's for me. You felt that way. I felt that way. What has God put on your heart to tell them today?
What I would say, Karen, is what we continually say to those women. We call it the land of possible, and we even have a parable about that. But there is hope. You know, as we held forth those sunflower seeds, there is hope. And if God can take my life and the lives of the women that work with me and the lives of the women that have come here and make something so beautiful out of all of those ashes, it is possible for every woman that there is possible in their life and hope.
When God first got a hold of Kim, he knew what he was getting. He knew her past. The same as when he got a hold of me. People who see us today would probably not realize that our stories are so devastating and were meant to destroy us. But God knew that he could take those and turn them into plans for his glory and to redeem us. So if you're watching today, I don't know what your circumstances are. I don't know if you're in an abusive marriage. I don't know if you're struggling with your self-esteem. I don't know if you have a prodigal. I don't know if you're dealing with an addiction or perhaps had an abortion. But I know that the two women you saw conversing here today have pretty much walked every one of those situations with a God who has never left their side. Kim cried out, and so did I. And I'm asking you to do the very same thing today. You could be one of these sunflower seeds. And in God's hand, you will grow into a wonderful sunflower. But you have to say yes first, just like Kim said. And that indeed takes a courageous heart.
If you are looking for a dynamic speaker for your next women's conference or event and would like more information on Karen's availability, please visit her website at www.courageousheart.org. Karen will be speaking at the following locations: If you would like a DVD copy of today's program, you may order one through our website, www.courageousheart.org. The preceding program was made possible in part by the following ministry partners: Mike Kehoe Ford and Meyer Electric Incorporated. If you would like to be a partner of A Courageous Heart or make a one-time donation, please contact us through A Courageous Heart at www.acourageousheart.org. A Courageous Heart is a viewer-supported ministry.